Hey, hello everyone, Dmitro here. So, welcome to the final live stream of this year. And I decided this should be an epic live stream. So, today I'm going to share with you project management from start to finish. I'll try to explain how project management works from the initiation of the project, from start of the project to the end. The caveat here is that I will assume that you know a bit about project management terminology, or at least you are somewhere near uh, project management, so some basic terms you know already. So I will not stop explaining all the terms. I will focus on the high level, big picture of project management, why it works, what tools you have, and why you need them, and so on. All right. So, if you're joining this live stream for the first time, let me introduce myself. My name is Dmitro Nizhbetsky. I'm a project manager, IT project manager with more than 12 years of experience. And about the same time, I was mentoring project managers and still do. I'm the author of the Practical Project Management book here. And most probably you're watching this on my YouTube channel where I shared hundreds of videos about project management, leadership, and everything related to it. All right, without further ado, let's dive into project management. So, project management, start to end. That's the topic. And this session, this training is for all levels of project managers. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible and explain as much as possible so that even if you have like little to no experience, you will understand what we're talking about. And if you are an experienced project manager, I can guarantee you will find some golden nuggets here to take back to your current projects and work. And in any case, if you at some point feel like, okay, I don't get it, I don't understand what this guy is talking about, then I recommend that you get my professional development plan. It will lead you to many templates, plans, and explanations and additional resources that will help you to understand the concepts that we are going to discuss today. The link somewhere is somewhere in the description of this video. Go around, find it at some point, and believe me, you'll find a lot of valuable resources there. And by the way, I'm really curious where you are joining from, if you are a project manager or not. So say hello in the comments and let me know where you're from and what is your current role. And I will dive in. So I will do it a bit, I would say, non-traditionally. I will start explaining project management from project requirements because we need to understand one critical idea, that there is actually a hierarchy of project requirements. And based on the availability of these requirements, you will run your project in a different way. So first of all, at the top, we have the very high level business requirements. This is like top stuff that drives the business and the business need of a project. And it may sound like, okay, our whole organization needs to comply with new GDPR regulations. You know what GDPR is, so this is data protection laws in Europe. So everyone should comply with them. This is the high-level business requirement. And then this business requirement will break down into smaller pieces into stakeholder requirements. And then different stakeholders from different departments of your organization will come and tell you, okay, to comply with GDPR, we need to have a notification when we collect data. We want to store the data that customers allow us to store. We can communicate with customers only if they give us consent, and so on and so on. So there are a lot of stuff about this business requirement that you need to collect from different sources. And then you will know what each stakeholder from each different part of your organization require to comply with this business requirement. And then from stakeholder requirements, you will identify solution or system requirements. And in our like IT industry world, it's either user stories and epics, or in some cases specification or some technical documentation that we can use to describe what's need to be done. So what kind of features and capabilities and traits our final product or service need to have. Now, why it's important? Because a project can start from a different level of these requirements. We may start with just business requirements, we may start with stakeholder requirements, or right away with access to solution requirements. And this will define how complex our project management will be. So what are the typical types or groups of projects that you may encounter? First of all, it's an outcome or aware project, or outcome aware project that knows what needs to be done. So we already have a project owner who knows that we need some certain deliverable. For example, it's a web application or mobile application, and somewhere in his head or her head, they have this vision of the final product, so they kind of can elaborate on all the solution requirements, so all the user stories. If you take time, you can get them from the project owners or stakeholders. You can easily find them. This is the outcome aware project. And this is the most typical project that you get in the IT industry most of the times, because we do a lot of pre-work. There are certain roles that do this pre-work, and they come to project managers already with the idea or the vision of deliverables we need to create. It's only a matter of iteratively collect the requirements, the solution requirements. And that's why most of you guys, when you get into the IT industry, you will work with Scrum or Kanban, and a lot of your projects will be smaller ones, and they will be on this side. They already will jump right into the implementation with Scrum, where you collect solution requirements right away. But that's not only the only like type of project that you can get. So the second type is problem-aware projects. In this case, you don't know about the major deliverables. You have only like an idea of what product or service or category of products can help you achieve the business goal. For example, you may know that you need a project management software to improve productivity across the organization, but you don't know which one exactly. You don't know what are the main capabilities that you need from this product or service. So in essence, you kind of have already access to stakeholder requirements at this level. So you kind of understand that you need a project management solution here, a tool or a software. So you need to select one or create one and introduce it inside the organization. But it might be more complex than that. You might be like you might have a goal-aware project. This is a project where you have only the idea of the business goal. So yeah, we need to improve productivity in our organization, but what does that mean? We cannot be sure, we cannot be confident that if we introduce a project management tool, that will improve productivity to the required level, or if it will solve the main root cause of inefficiencies. For example, you might have an organization that does a lot of communication with customers, like real estate stuff, and your agents, people who do the project, actually, they keep a lot of written notes. And then the productivity boost will come from digitalizing this whole process and use it across the whole organization in the same way, so that people can substitute each other, so that we know which customers we approached, which not, and so on. So in these types of projects, we have only business goal. We need to improve productivity, but then we need to go and find the solution that will help us achieve the required business goal. So in this case, you don't you don't have any idea of what specific product or category will help you to achieve the goal, and you have only access to business requirements. And we will focus today on this type of project. This is the most complex type of projects, and it will require the whole range of all possible tools and processes that project management best practices can provide. At the same time, you need to understand that your project at some its aspects may sometime fall into like lower level. So for example, you have a project with which is mostly outcome aware project, but then there is a piece or a component of the project where like, okay, yeah, we need a cloud infrastructure, but we don't know which one. So we kind of digrade to a business aware project where we need to do a lot of analysis. We need to collect the requirements. We need to collect the information about some costs and so on and so on. Only that after that we can proceed with the project. Okay, there is also a not typical type of project, which is unaware project. It's when you don't know about the need for a solution to achieve the goal, and therefore you don't have real understanding why you need this, but you do have access to business requirements because these projects are usually very specific. They are like niche projects, like, okay, I will come to you and install a productivity system or project management system. You don't know that you need this, but there are like a lot of requirements that I know, and I can adjust them to your needs, and I will come to you and integrate them. And such projects, the only difference of such project compared with, I would say, problem-aware projects is that you start them with the project proposal. So you write a proposal to a potential client, and you try to sell them the idea or the need for this project. That's the only difference. It's kind of more common for vendors that provide solutions as service. So if you work in such a company, you should like know what I'm talking about. You make a lot of proposals to customers to implement different stuff, and that's how your project starts. All right. So again, we are talking today about projects that have only goal awareness. So they understand there is a business need, and they need to work through all the hoops and troubles to identify what deliverables we need to create, what requirements we need to implement, and therefore form the scope of the project. And this leads us to one critical, maybe most critical idea that you need to understand from this session is that projects don't live in vacuum. You don't implement projects in vacuum. And to make it even more complex for you guys to understand project management on an expert level, we'll complicate it, and we'll say that actually we will work like for a client. So we have one organization, it's our performing organization, it's where we work, and we provide services to other clients, to other organizations. So actually we have two environments. We have our organizational environment, and we have environment from the from customer. So in this case, you kind of need to ensure that you align your project management approach, all you do from now on, with both environments. You need to work like with stakeholders from both organizations. You need to ensure that you know the processes and requirements of both organizations in terms of delivering products and services, especially in terms of quality, acceptance, cybersecurity, compliance, and all that stuff. On top of that, definitely you will have, like, your organization as a vendor will have a preferred project management approach. So you almost never, like it's 99.9% of time, you will never start a project from a blank page. Something will be there in the organization, and you should use it as the foundation for the start of the project. And most probably your clients will have something. And if it's a big organization, if it's an enterprise organization, you most probably will get a lot of mandatory processes, templates, reports that you need to make, and so on, so on, so on. So you need to take into account all of that. And that's why most probably, like, your first step would be in most cases is to identify stakeholders. And if you work in the organization for some time, you should already know internal stakeholders. And this is like top left box here, your internal stakeholders. If you are joining a new organization as a project manager, it should be your top priority. Identify internal stakeholders that could potentially help you run your project or could impede your project in some cases. Then, when you get a client that you will work with, you do the same. You'll go and try to identify stakeholders from that side. We'll talk more about stakeholders in a minute, but right now we need to understand one more critical idea. So, when you get such a project, which is like a goal-aware project, when we don't know what we need to do, there is a lot considerations should be put into the life cycle. You need to try to understand the life cycle based on the best practices of project management in your industry. So if you work as a uh, project manager in smaller company, you will probably uh, have a preferred life cycle. And you need to understand that project management actually starts from a certain point. So just what you are seeing here in this screen. So sometimes pre-sales process is a part of your project because you as a project manager try to help everyone to sell the services that you provide. And you communicate with customers very early during the project life cycle. And you do this feasibility analysis, high-level planning, contract negotiations, but at some point you will sign a contract. But contracts usually don't have enough details about project scope, its constraints, its deadlines, maybe some budget constraints are in the project, but in general, a contract describes how the two organizations will communicate or how they will interact with each other. Only then you start and go into project initiation process or project initiation phase, where you will start identifying the stakeholder requirements, business requirements, and trying to capture all of that to narrow down the project scope. And the idea here is that in theory, the project usually starts with a signed project charter. But in practice, this is a good example where the theory of project management and reality, real world implementation of project management doesn't align, because in most cases you will already work and put a lot of efforts into your project before signing a project charter. And in most cases you even don't have a project charter to start with. You just jump into the project and do it right away. So here's an idea that you need to understand. If you are like a scrum master or junior project manager in the IT industry, your life cycle actually looks very simplistic, where you kind of jump at the start of the project, you know the deliverables, like that's your software product or service that you deliver, that you develop, and then you do this scrum or Kanban implementation right away. So planning is execution and all this stuff just like blend together. There's nothing, no other phases. In reality, there are phases, but we'll not dive too deep into small project life cycles. We assume we have a bigger project with more complexity in it. And in this case, what we have is this project with multiple phases, where we do pre-sales, initiation, maybe some concept development, prototyping, and only then we get into the, I would say, typical stuff that project managers do. You do planning, you collect requirements, you do the design, development, integration, testing, deployment, and so on. So that is what I'm leading you to here, is that if you have a goal-aware project where you don't know yet what needs to be done, you cannot jump right into the planning. There will be phases where you will do specific work to get your project from goal-aware to problem-aware to solution-aware state. So you actually will try to clarify all these details and get to the idea of the project, what needs to be done in the project. All right? That's why here at the start of the project, when you just learned about business goal, business idea, business need. I'm using this term, by the way, interchangeably for one reason, because most organizations don't know what they're doing in this case, how to start a project. They don't write out these business cases, business needs documents. They just jump right in. So in this case, this is the general term to speak about very high level requirement for the project or for the business, or what business needs. Okay, so based on that, based on the preferred project management approach in your organization, in client's organization, you must visualize the project lifecycle. And here I want you to understand that you shouldn't complicate this process too much. This is not something uh, that requires a lot of in-depth expertise, technical knowledge, or something like that. For one reason, most industries and niches have preferred project management approach. So, for example, IT industry has this software project lifecycle, or software development project lifecycle, and it follows usually this pattern of phases, where a phase is just a portion or a period of a project where you do work different in nature. So if you look carefully here, you will see that, okay, pre-sales and initiation phase is usually a very high level negotiation style communication with customers. Then if we go to concept development and prototyping, depending on what we develop, it might be work with designers, work with UI UX experts, maybe with some architects to create the concept of the architecture for our IT system. Maybe then, like in prototyping, you will work with some developers to create quick and dirty implementations of some components of this project. So in concept development, you will work with some subject matter experts most of the time and go back and forth with your clients. In prototyping, you will work with your developers, but again, most probably in a different way than during your usual Scrum. For example, this phase usually is better when you have shorter iterations. For example, if you keep to the Scrum, then it will be 1 week sprints, or even shorter, maybe in some cases. When the planning phase is kind of this rinse and repeat process, everything that we are going to discuss here will be like throughout this phase. But when you get into development, this is your like full blown Scrum implementation. When you get into hypercare phase, it's more about fixing defects. There might be some Kanban ideas that you can use in that phase. So again, this is just a collection of uh, pieces of the project where the work is different in nature. And as you can see, there might be different phases that overlap, that go in parallel, and therefore you need to manage them in a bit different way. And another idea is that each phase ideally should end up with creating one or more major deliverables for your project. So, for example, in initiation phase, you will have your project charter. In concept design phase, you will have conceptual designs and diagrams and ideas that you will then implement. In prototype, usually you'll create some version of your product to prove a critical assumption that these, for example, two technologies can work together and provide the required results, required performance, and so on. In planning, it will be a project plan, and so on and so on. So each phase will have its own deliverables. All right, so I will pause here for a second, guys, and I'll ask the chat. So is it still clear? Do we need to go deeper? Should I explain it in more, I would say, simpler terms? Tell me the temperature. From 1, go much simpler, to 10, go much like hardcore project management stuff. So tell me, please, how do you perceive? Is it too difficult? Is it okay? I understand all that kind of stuff right now. All right, because now we are going into more complex stuff, I would say. All right, hello everyone. Hello, thanks for chiming in. And I will proceed and I will check your comments in the process. So, our main idea, okay, we so far, I'll just summarize what we got. We understood our business idea. We checked our company and company of our clients. So we understand that there is an environment in which we need to work, and this environment has its own requirements. And this, okay, hardcore. I will give you one hardcore idea. So when we talk about client's environment and your environment with all the processes, policies, and tools, I want you to start thinking about everything that like restricts or controls your project is actually a project requirement. And it should go and be implemented in the same way as a product requirement that you would implement for your product or service of the project. So, for example, if you need to create a login page, that's a product requirement. If you need to provide a test report in certain format, that's definitely a project management requirement for you. And that means that if you treat it the same way, along the lines, you will kind of end up from the requirements and through the whole ideas that we'll discuss right now, you will end up with specific tasks. And this is the, I would say, most critical idea, most critical concept that for you guys, for senior project managers, will help to make your project more transparent. It will help you to explain and like show transparently all the work hidden behind the scenes for the stakeholders. If you treat not only not only product requirements for your product as requirements, if you treat the same way all the requirements that come to your project management approach, you will identify much more work that needs to be done. All right, so we'll dive in here. And so far, our main goal would be, all right, I need to create a project chart. This is like a top idea that comes from PMP certification. Maybe Prince2 has something similar. I don't remember what's the term from that certification. Maybe you know. So, but the idea is that you need to limit your project scope, because right now you have a project, not a project, but business need. For example, again, we need to improve productivity in the organization. That's the business need that we need to do. But we can implement lots of stuff here. We can implement a project management software from one side. We can implement, I don't know, some work tracking system to ensure that people log hours, and maybe that will increase productivity. We can implement AI solutions to do some routine tasks that will save some time for people, and that will also bring productivity improvement. We can digitalize our whole project management or our whole work and keep everything in one tool. That's another approach. But the problem is that we are usually limited by constraints, by budget, by time, by resources and their skills, what they can implement. And also we kind of limited with the change management ideas. You cannot introduce whatever you want in the organization and assume that it will work. There should be a lot of training, change management, and so on, that will ensure the adoption of these all tools. That's why it's critical to create a project charter, and we'll dive a bit deeper into what goes in the charter in a few minutes. But the idea is that it collects all the high-level information about the project. What needs to be done, what are the project goals, what are the things we need to know about the project in terms of constraints, in terms of assumptions and risks. And if we have this goal-aware project where we don't know the deliverables, we need to work with stakeholders right away, because we need to find critical stakeholders who pay for the project, usually the project sponsors or some champions of this idea, who will take responsibility for one approach or the other. And as we discussed, we may be selecting between introducing some AI capabilities or introducing one project management tool that everyone will use across the organization. And we'll need some stakeholder to take to make the decision in which direction we will go here. That's why the first step is kind of, yes, we want to create project charter, but first of all, we need stakeholders. That's why we do all the stakeholder management. Again, if you work in the same organization for some time, you know your internal stakeholders. If you don't, then you need to start with them. After that, you go to a client's side and ask them all about their stakeholders. You do the stakeholder analysis. You'll have to select several people. Like, I recommend that in most cases, unless you have very, very big project, you will select just 10 stakeholders, and you will make this full stakeholder management process with them. You will create engagement strategies for these specific 10 stakeholders and ensure that they are engaged. You will track their engagement and so on. Because most projects in IT industry are rather small. If you will address the needs and control just 10 stakeholders, most important ones, then most probably it will be like 80-20 rule. You will cover the most important ones on the project. Okay, why do we need stakeholders? Again, we need to break down our business requirements, business need or business requirements into stakeholder requirements. So someone in the organization should have a say and tell us, okay, what needs to be done. So, and again, this is how we do it. We take business need and we want to convert it into a specific project goal. So if, for example, a business need is, we need to comply, the whole organization needs to comply with GDPR requirements. What is the goal of the project? You may say, okay, the whole organization should comply with GDPR rules. And this will be the first sign that actually have multiple projects, not just one. Because most probably you'll have to update your websites, you'll need to do some work with your databases, you'll need to do some marketing or communication with your customers. Maybe you need to create new systems that will separate customers that gave consent, that didn't give consent. And then you'll need a business process to, for example, if they request to remove their data. That's a separate project. And if you see that at this point, okay, I have too many goals across the landscape, then it means like most probably I have a program here. I need to break it down into separate projects, and each project will have its goals. And once you have a project goal, you will identify project objectives, which are more specific, measurable objectives. For example, we need to clear out database from users that didn't give us consent, or we need to re-engage customers that didn't give us consent before the deadline. And we need to communicate that. That will be a specific project objective. If we are doing the website update to put all these checkboxes, privacy policies, cookie policy, everything, all the good stuff, most probably that's a separate software development project. You see, like, just by analyzing the business need and breaking it down, we already can identify a need to do separate projects. And that's probably one of the mistakes that many project managers do on a high level, on a senior level. So you need to be aware of this. Otherwise, you create a monstrosity of the project that requires a lot of different types of work, different expertise, different stakeholders, and it all in one mess. So consider if you need a program rather than one big project. And all that we do is to identify the main deliverable, the one or several deliverables that you need to produce as the result of your project. It's, for example, again, if we're talking about we need to comply with GDPR, so our website should have all these required components. So the main deliverable here is the GDPR compliant website following the rules. And again, I'll bring back to this idea that what we do here is that we go up from goal aware project to problem aware project and then to outcome aware project. So we're working out or elaborating our project to high level. Okay. So when you do this, the idea is that you need to create a project charter. Whether you do it as a formal document or you just collect the information that usually is inside this document, it doesn't matter. It's just to ensure that we set some limits for the project, some constraints. Again, we want to ensure that when we show this document to most of our key stakeholders, and they will agree that, yeah, this is the right way to proceed. And again, if you don't have information to fill out this document, to fill out this information like project goal, main deliverables, scope, risks, and assumptions, most probably you are still need to put a lot of efforts into the project initiation phase, work with stakeholders to identify or break down the business need into smaller pieces. In just a second, I'll explain how you do that. But if you can, this is like a checkpoint for you. If you can specify what you are going to do, you will have this scope section or main deliverable sections or high level requirement section of the document. And it will like make your project from going, let me just make myself for a second bigger to illustrate it. So when you start a project, you have this vast amount of possible solutions. From one point, a business need, you can implement a lot of things to achieve the goal, and you don't know where is actually the project goal. When you create a project chart, what happens is that you narrow down all the possible solutions, the scope that you can implement to a certain amount. And the idea is that during this initiation phase of the project, where you try to break down the business idea into more specific, tangible deliverables for the project, you are narrowing down everything from all possible solutions in the world to one or two solutions that you can implement, and you believe that this implementation will actually help you achieve the business need, achieve the business goal. That's why it's also critical that this project charter is in certain way approved by key stakeholders, by project owners. You should kind of create it as a proof, as a strategy, as a vision to achieve the project goal. And if they sign on it, they kind of take the responsibility or uh, agree with you that that's the right direction. If we implement it, most probably we'll achieve the project goal. All right, good. Let me just go bigger again. Okay, so how do we do, how do we clarify requirements? So this is kind of back and forth a bit with customers, again, with key stakeholders. You need to start collecting requirements. And so who's responsible for that? Usually like key project stakeholders, subject matter experts, maybe sometimes project team as subject matter experts. Sometimes you may get a project where you have this high level business need and no one in the organization, a single stakeholder, actually knows how to achieve that goal. You can imagine a like non-digital industry, I don't know, like real estate agency, which, or real estate company that wants to run their work as projects. They know little about AI, so they want to implement AI in their projects, in their work, but they don't know how to do it, and they don't have a single person who can actually talk about it. So they will go and find external consultants and try to find out what they can implement, what solutions are there, what meets their requirements in terms of business need. So, what are the typical ideas here? That you try to work with these all people to collect stakeholder requirements on a high level. And how do you do this? You can use all possible business analysis techniques. And things like interviews, brainstorming, questionnaires, surveys, document analysis, focus groups, competitor analysis. By the way, competitor analysis is one of the top priority techniques that you should go for in the IT industry, just to collect the ideas and see what works, what doesn't work. Then prototyping, observation, workshops, whatever works for you to break down the high level business requirement into more specific stakeholder requirements that potentially could lead to achieving the business goal. Again, there is no magic here. It's like finding the right people who can explain possible solutions to achieve the business need. It's all about communicating with the right people, asking the right questions, um, putting people together in one room, brainstorming, researching, and stuff like that. So a lot of project managers overcomplicate this stuff, but in most cases, you need to understand that at some point, an executive level person said, okay, I have a business need, go achieve it. And what it takes to come up to stakeholder requirements is to meet again with that person and say, okay, what do you mean by that? What key performance metrics is, what indicators, what things you tangibly want to achieve as a result of this project? What do you want to improve? And they will just tell you about it. What they will, and this will be the most straightforward way to find out the stakeholder requirements, right? Okay. Then we go and collect a lot of stakeholder requirements. So again, imagine that your project is such a big endeavor, such impactful idea for the whole organization, and the problem is that no one knows what it's all about, and you go around and collect information from all possible stakeholders. Maybe you hire consultants like, I don't know, Deloitte or something like that, and they tell you a lot about how to implement different productivity system or compliance system. And in the result, you will actually get a lot of requirements. And in this case, a good tool to use is a requirements traceability metrics. Usually you will create it yourself or with business analyst. Sometimes product managers and product owners can use it for their own work. And again, there is no magic. It's just a spreadsheet which helps you to group, analyze, triage, prioritize all the requirements that you collected. Again, I'll repeat this idea that if you go for a big project with multiple sources of requirements, you will end up with so many requirements that you will not be able to implement them all, because you will have constraints of budget and time, and you will need to select the most optimal set of requirements that can lead to potentially achieving the business goal. That's why you need to collect them, see who provided them, why they provided them, see if there are conflicts, and then resolve them. Sometimes your leadership team will say, okay, this is a must-have feature, and you will need to circle back with subject matter experts. They'll tell, yeah, this is a valid feature, but implementation of this feature requires a long list of additional requirements because it's not like easy to do. And in the long run, this living document will also serve you to break down stakeholder requirements into solution requirements. Only then you will be able to identify which requirements will help you with finishing the project. Okay, this is one idea. This is why you need requirements traceability metrics in some cases, in some complex projects. So what happens then? Again, what we have achieved so far is that we went through the business goal, business need of the project. We identified the project goal, project objective, and main deliverable. How did we do that? We first collected the stakeholder requirements. Maybe we break down them a bit more to understand what needs to be done. And after that, we have a list of requirements. Then we go through the requirements and identify, okay, which one are really essential, which one will help us achieve the business goal. And we will start writing a project scope statement. So this is another document. In theory, it's a document that you create on every project. In practice, you will almost never create it like that, only if you get something complex like this, where you will have to work out and find the solution. So at some point, you will create a version of scope statement that your customers and stakeholders, your sponsors, will accept. Again, it can be a formal document. It can be just a meeting where you will just present the scope of work, where you present all these ideas, and that's all. Don't be too like close-minded, like that's a theory. That's not how it works in the real world. No, it works like that. You just substitute the method, the medium by which you deliver the same information. Again, usually project manager and business analysts are responsible for this work. And you do it in a simple text format, in narrative language, and the idea is very simple. Think about what happened. We started the project with just business goal, and your top stakeholders, your key stakeholders, they don't know what you're going to do. They just want to get the result. Then you go and say, okay, we will narrow down to just few solutions in our project charter. We'll do this, and that in this project. Then we went and collected requirements. We selected the most appropriate requirements. And now we describe in more details what main deliverables we'll create. We'll break it down, describe them in a simple language so that customers understand them. Maybe we'll explain the requirements that needs explaining. Maybe we'll describe the acceptance criteria, assumptions, and constraints that we include in this project. Everything that will, again, help us narrow down the project a bit more and say, okay, we selected one solution. This is the scope. These are the requirements. These are the acceptance criteria. These are the exclusions from the project that we'll not do. Milestones maybe on the very high level, and so on. Do you agree that this set of information, if we implement this in the project, will achieve the business goal? And again, this is another critical milestone. You need to share responsibility for this kind of projects again and again, and ensure that stakeholders understand what you do in the project, or what you are going to do in the project, and they agree that, yeah, they got all the information to make the educated decision to continue with this project. Because that's one killer idea. You can get through all these like hoops and all these troubles to create all this document just to find out one critical point, that this is not a feasible project. So these old tools serve as checkpoints to say, okay, yeah, we're working through the project. We're trying to identify the things that we need to implement. And at some point, we reinforce our ability to implement this project, but only within the selected solution, scope, and constraints of this project. All right? Okay, guys, I need some water. Senka asks if this is a real live session. Senka, hello. Yes, it's a live session. Dmitro here. Thanks for joining us. We are talking about project management. Can I turn on the captions? I don't think so, but the captions will be generated somewhere next day after this event, if you want to watch it on YouTube after that. All right, good. Now, again, I'll pause here. If someone has any questions to this portion of the session, you can ask them. I will make another pause at the next milestone, and I'll try to answer them if you have any questions. Okay, we are going into the next critical idea. I'll illustrate what I said just now. The difference between project charter and project scope statement. Usually people don't understand it because I can guarantee, guys, 99% of you watching this will never have such a project which requires this kind of documentation. So you never experience this. So project chart is a very high level description of the project to set some boundaries. Project scope statement is a more definitive document, but still it works in the same lane as a project chart. It just elaborates on more ideas that we learned about the project. So there is a lot of overlap between the project chart and project scope statement, like objectives, scope, deliverables, assumptions, constraints, and so on. The rest is like, I would say, technical information or auxiliary information that you need to kick off the project. Project scope statement, additional information, is something that we will continue elaborating during the project planning. And this is another critical idea. Whenever you think about creating any kind of document or any artifact in your project, you need to think about very hard. Will I ever use this document again once I created it? Or will anyone else will ever use this document after we create it? Because often what happens is that you create a document for the sake of the document, you get approval, and then you like throw it away in this bunch of documents you have on your Google Drive, and that's all. You forget about it. And your project's charter is totally disconnected from project scope statement. They describe completely two different projects. And then when you go into project planning, you identify so many different things that there is absolutely no connection to the scope statement and then to this project charter. So all the work before that is completely wasted. So the idea here, if you have a complex project, everything should be tailored. Everything should be integrated with one another. If you have project scope in the project charter, you elaborate on that scope in the scope statement. Then you will take the same deliverables and go and work with them in your project planning, right? That's the whole idea of project tailoring and integration of all these project ideas on your project. If you don't have this, again, you are wasting a lot of time because you don't understand why you create these documents or why you use these processes. Excellence Mania, hello from France, hello from Poland. Glad to see you on this live stream. All right. With that said, what we achieved so far by doing all that is that we went from goal-aware project, where we don't know what to produce, what kind of project, what kind of deliverables we need. We have only business requirements. We went to stakeholder requirements and selected one solution, one possible solution that likely will help us achieve the goal. By the way, no one should expect that you will select the solution as a project manager yourself and that you will kind of magically bring all this knowledge to the organization. It's always work with stakeholders, with project team, with subject matter experts. Therefore, you should always keep this in mind. You should always communicate that this is a collaborative effort. You are not doing it by yourself, and therefore you should not take responsibility for all these decisions. You should always go like, here's the best solution based on what our subject matter experts, what on consultants told us, what the team thinks. This is the set of requirements that we think will help us achieve the project goal. Do you agree? And you need to get this agreement from them, and they should say, yeah, we agree, proceed. All right, so let's move on. About testing strategy, I see some conversations going on here. I will get back to this. This is an important topic. That's just something that doesn't happen like if I plug it in here, it will create a lot of confusion. Just remember that all the testing strategy, quality management requirements are just requirements. I told about this at the start of this session. Everything that you need to incorporate into your project as such as testing strategy should be treated as normal requirements. And moreover, they should probably get into your requirements traceability matrix and get through the same processes, the same workflows as the requirements to your product and service. All right, I will cover that, don't worry. So we have the approved scope statement. Then the main idea that, okay, if we have the approved project scope statement, which includes the description of the project scope, which is usually the main deliverables, we must create a work breakdown structure. That's another tool which sounds super theoretical, which sounds for these waterfallish projects which we don't use in the IT industry, but believe me, this is a critical tool for any IT project, which even if it uses like pure Scrum or something hybrid to the Scrum, it's still a very powerful tool, and you can and should use the tool. Or I should say, as everything in project management, you should tailor this idea into your project management approach, because work breakdown structure is I would say, the huge set of powerful concepts and ideas combined into a visual tool. But you can decompose it into smaller ideas and implement it inside Agile or software development tools and processes that we use in the IT industry. But I think this is one of the most critical tools that lots of project managers neglect, and therefore statistics even show from PMI, from Project Management Institute, that the lack of work breakdown structure is usually the cause of the project failure. And I'll, by the way, show you why it happens on IT projects. So again, how do you do this? You do it yourself, and with project team, you create it maybe sometimes with the help of subject matter experts. What you need to know about work breakdown structure in high-level terms: the decomposition technique is the most important one. It's very simple. It's how you break down the project into smaller pieces. You'll use brainstorming most of the times with interviews and meetings with stakeholders. All right, very simple. Again, it's all about meetings, but someone in those meetings need to know the concept of work breakdown structure to ask the right question, to brainstorm the right ideas. So let's move on. And what is happening here is that a lot of work at this point will happen in parallel. You can't do one without another because they interrelated. So you have work breakdown structure. When you start to decompose it, you will most probably also work more on the requirements, and you will start breaking down the stakeholder requirements into solution and system requirements. And this usually come in what you guys know of is the epics and user stories, or specifications if you still have them. So with that said, when you do it side by side, you will end up with something like this visualization of a work breakdown structure. This is hierarchical diagram where you have at the top your end product. This is the vision of the end result. And again, we'll talk about where you take them. On the next level, you have your deliverables. These are main pieces that you need to produce in order to finish the project successfully and reach project objectives. And then you will break down them further into work packages, and work packages then you'll break them down into tasks. One idea that you need to understand is everything that is in work breakdown structure should be a tangible piece of your project. It should be testable. You can deliver it to someone, and it's a required piece of the project. And moreover, like the sum of work packages will give you the full deliverable. So the idea is that no work floats around work breakdown structure. Everything should be included. For example, if you guys talk about testing and test strategies, then most probably you will have a test report and test strategy as the document as one of the work packages. And then the deliverable will be a full report on project or product quality in the end. So everything should fall into work breakdown structure. And again, this leads us to the big idea that I would probably show you this on this slide. So when you break it down, you work with different sources to find out the deliverables and sub-deliverables and work packages. And here's what I want you to understand. You don't invent these deliverables. You don't get them out of thin air. First of all, like as I said, at the top, you have your end product or vision of the end product. And you take it from the project charter, which comes into project scope statement, which comes into the into your work breakdown structure. So this is the chain that you shouldn't ever break. Whatever customers asked you at the start of the project should go all the way to the work breakdown structure at the top. By the way, it can change over time when you develop your project, when you try to understand what needs to be done. But after you plan the project or you agreed with customers about the vision of the end product, if it changes, you need to go back, change the project chart, change the scope statement, and come back here with a new vision of the product. Keep them aligned, keep them synced up throughout the whole project. What we are most interested here on this slide is the how do you actually get the main deliverables. And again, you don't invent them. You see, you take the main deliverables from project chart and project scope statement. You just copy the names and put them on the first level of decomposition. Then you can work with some stakeholder subject matter experts. They may help you to identify additional deliverables that, for example, your product owners, your business unit doesn't know. Some technical stuff, some compliance stuff that only subject matter experts know. Then you can review your typical project lifecycle and add some main deliverables based on the need. Not everything, I would say, in different way. A work breakdown structure should include all the required deliverables. It means deliverables that you will deliver to the customers, but likewise deliverables that you as a project manager and as a project team need to produce for this project. Things like even like test strategy plan or the quality plan, quality report. These might not be interested to your customers, your stakeholders, but it's something that you need to produce. Likewise, project charter might be a deliverable that your customers don't want to waste time on, but your best practices or preferred project management approach in the organization requires it. Okay, so you can and should add your deliverables into the work breakdown structure if you want to have a transparent project. Again, guys, I understand that a lot of you work in vendor companies and you cannot show everything to your customers. You cannot achieve full transparency. That's bad. That's bad practice, and you need to overcome it in one way or another. You must show all the scope to customers, even that scope that happens because of inefficiencies of your organization. All right, so then you have some special artifacts or documents that stakeholders must approve. You will have some interim versions of the product, maybe for some demos, maybe to show some stakeholders, maybe for exhibitions. I don't know. There are a lot of real-life scenarios when customers will want to have a version of application with some features finished so that they can, I don't know, get funding for the project or get green light to proceed with the project. Then there might be some integrations that you need to do, and in general, you can brainstorm the deliverables that you must create in the project. Again, this would be usually either technical stuff that no one in the customer's organization know, or your stakeholders don't know, or it's something that you need as a team to efficiently implement the project. And then you use decomposition technique with your team to break down main deliverables into sub-deliverables and work packages, and you do it to make a project more manageable. Like you want to break it down into such small pieces that will help you to manage this project and keep control of it on a reasonable level. I would say, okay, there is some math here and how many deliverables and work packages you need to have, but I don't want to give you that numbers just not to confuse you. You should decompose the project as much as possible. If you feel like you have way too many pieces, well, maybe that's good enough, but usually no. You usually don't decompose the project good enough for the needs of the project. All right, but again, you are on the IT project managers channel. I'm an IT project manager, and I totally get it that most IT projects never have this work breakdown structure as a separate tool, and this is totally okay. So when you look at this work breakdown structure and you take a simple small project in the IT industry, it usually looks like something like this. So you have mobile application as your main deliverable, as the division of the project. And then if you think about all the possible deliverables, it might be as simple as this. You have your release candidate or gold master or whatever you call it, the final version of the application that you can put into the market, and that's all. Project is finished. And then you might have a lot of similar deliverables. If you work with Scrum, you can think about that every increment at the end of each sprint, you'll have some build or version of your application, and it will be an interim deliverable for your project. And you can name them as you want. It might be like just build 1, build 2, build 3, build 3, or it might be a named version which will include feature A and feature B. There will be a version that will include all the features. There will be a build that include all the features and they were tested, so they passed the quality assurance and the quality control processes and so on. And in this case, like definitely there is no value in creating a work breakdown structure on such a small project. But I will repeat myself. The concepts are more important for us, for project managers, an ability to apply those concepts into real-world applications. What happens more often, and again, it resembles a project or a work breakdown structure, is that we have the end product and we develop our software software projects in long sequence of smaller projects, in releases, in versions, or stuff like that. That's why in your Jira, you may have a release 1, 1.1, 1.2, and so on. And then you have your epics and user stories in that release. So, and you put it like that in Jira, you organize it the same way. And again, your deliverables, if you think like the connection between this theoretical deliverables concept and how we do it in the IT industry. In IT industry, we create one and the same deliverable, our product with additional capabilities and features or fixes with new code. And we have some interim deliverables in our project. But we keep it in Jira. And in Jira and like in Scrum, the idea of deliverables is not present. Instead, we have only requirements. But what happens is that we have a deliverable as our increment, which includes certain requirements. And these requirements are in the form of epics and user stories. And we kind of wrap it up to the top level as an increment, as a deliverable. But here's I would say the most critical idea here, that when you do it in Jira in this agile way with Scrum, with user stories, you forget about this deliverable. Because getting from even this feature complete build, one of the final deliverables, one of the final development deliverables to a release candidate usually takes a lot of work. in terms of, again, testing, getting acceptance, getting it to the market, creating all the supporting materials to get it to the market, to submit it to App Store, to deploy it to a web server, and so on. That's why a lot of projects miss the work, or like miss to identify all the required work to create this very final deliverable. And they often forget to identify the work required to get acceptance on the final deliverable. And if you work with external client, with customer, with a big organization that has certain policies and processes to ensure that everything that they create and give to their customers pass certain requirements, you definitely need to comply with their regulations as well. And that's another place where uh, you don't plan it at the start of the project. You learn about it later at the end, where you say, okay, we finished. And your customers say, oh, sorry, no, we're not finished. We need to submit it to our quality assurance team. They will do 3 weeks testing, and they will come back with a report of defects that they found. They come back to you in 3 weeks with a huge list of things that you never thought about, because they have different expertise, they have different processes, which ideally you should have identified at the start of the project. All right. So what I want you to remember from this long rant about work breakdown structure, which I believe is the most important and critical concept in project management, is that you need to spend a lot of efforts to identify all the deliverables and honestly think about everything it takes to get your final result to the clients and make them accept it as the finished deliverable, as the finished project. All right, good. You can implement work breakdown structure inside Jira, inside other tools, following the Scrum processes and ideas. The only important and critical thing is that if you do it with epics and user stories, it means you will have some technical user stories or technical stuff that you need to transparently show within your sprint planning or release planning or roadmap, or you create a stabilization sprint, which is a common practice when, like, after the final development sprint, to create this release candidate, you will go into 1, 2, 3 sprints of stabilization where you will implement all the required requirements to deploying and delivering the product. All right. So just in these few sentences, like, a lot of IT projects have tremendous amount of scope and effort. If you fail to identify it on the start of the project, you will probably end up delaying your project by a lot. Now, the main idea is that after we break down and identify all the deliverables, we break them down into work packages, and then we decompose work packages into tasks. Again, we're getting back into more theoretical realm of project management for a broader audience, not only for software development project managers. And here's a critical idea, which will, again, you need to understand it because you will have to use it across multiple processes in project management in future planning, right? And this is it. Your task, you take your task and you estimate it or assess it, but you don't assess it only in terms of duration or cost, or you don't assess it in terms of what goes into acceptance criteria or description, what needs to be done. Because if you think about it, what happens in most projects for you, you have your task with a title and estimate in hours. That's all. That's all the attributes of the task. But that happens in the IT industry only because there is a lot of implied context. We imply that we have definition of done, and our team members know about it. We imply that we have a certain team and anyone can take it, so it doesn't matter who will take it. We imply that it will be done within the sprint, so start and end date are not that important. we imply that there are not many dependencies there, and so on and so on. That's why we have a very simplistic task. But if you do it the right way, the project management way, and you expand all the information that we encode into a task, you will have a long list with description, definition of done, location, duration, cost, assigned resources, required skill set, start and end date, dependencies, risks, risk reserves, and so on and so on. Just keep in mind this idea. This is a critical thing that we went through from the start of the project, and we got this low to a level of a single task. All right. And again, guys, if you feel like I've been talking about some concepts that are not fully clear for you, or you feel like my project doesn't need this, I have a more simplistic projects, then here's a thing that I want you to understand. That at some point you never know what kind of project you will get. So you need to be ready for that. And in some cases, some projects will require this knowledge just to identify or troubleshoot the problem, why your project doesn't work. And this professional development plan will help you assess your current knowledge to ensure that you know all the critical concepts. Almost everything that I'm talking about today is included as a checkbox in that professional development plan. And you will also get a lot of templates, for example, for scope management. We talked about a lot of scope management stuff. You will find a template to manage scope on your project. There are risk management plan as well, and a lot of different resources. So you can use your phone and scan this barcode, or you can go and get this development plan. Below this video, in the description, there is a link, or you can just go and use this link, itpmschool.com /get plan. Whatever works for you. I'm pretty sure that it will be a valuable asset for your professional development. All right. And again, if you have any questions, I will answer them on the go. So, all right. Good. For now, no questions. I'll proceed to the next idea. Okay. Project management from start to end, and we are somewhere in the middle. So what we achieved so far, we went through identifying from the business goal all the way to work breakdown structure, and now we went on and in theory, we identified deliverables, broke them down into work packages, and identify all the required tasks required to implement that work package. And this is where basically I'm coming to quality management, as you so many times commented on, because here comes the quality management plan in play. And as I said, the best strategy for you as a project manager is to treat all quality management ideas, whatever you call them, processes, requirements, as requirements, and they go into your list of requirements. And you treat them the same way as requirements, right? So let me pause here. I see some good questions, and I'll proceed this in just a second, all right? So the question is, what's your take on project manager gathering requirements then when there is no BA in the team? I believe that that's a bad situation. It's acceptable for smaller projects when you don't you don't have any other opportunity and the requirements are very simple. Like you can cover them in simple user stories. You don't need to create, I don't know, like spreadsheets full of contracts between APIs and other stuff like that. You don't need to map databases and like specify all the transformations. And you have a simple product where you like cannot impact it very easily, right? In this case, you still can work on such a project as a BA and as a project manager. But if you want to be a professional project manager, you probably want to leave that environment. You want, because in such a cases, you spend 90% of time working as a business analyst rather than a project manager. You do like your project management as a scrum master, or like you have just a few team members and there is no need for such level of project management. You want to go to another company which will promise you a bigger project, more responsibilities, and definitely a role of a dedicated business analyst. So for my students, I have a mentoring program, and I have a lot of project managers with lots of experience who are basically spend most of their time working as business analysts. And I recommend them to leave that company, find another organization that will give them more opportunities to grow. So good starting point, good experience, but that's a dead end. If you stay too long in that company, you will not be able to jump to bigger projects, even if you get enough experience. No project charter, no scope of work, etc. Blah blah blah. Typical idea, typical case. One thing that you need to remember, you don't need to create a formal document. If you know this concept, if you learned it right now, you can sneak it in. You can like say to customers, okay, let's align our vision. I've described our project in these terms like scope, high-level requirements, constraints, and so on. Let's review together. What do you think? Send it as an email or keep it in a Confluence page. Just align people in their vision. Not all projects need project charter, scope statement, and all this stuff. I teach all the time. You need to align, or you need to use the most simplistic project management approach you can to manage your project. You don't need all these complications for a small software development project when you lead 4 developers. No. You can do it like with very simplistic approaches, even like in any chat application. You can do it in Slack, and that's all you need. So definitely not all projects require this. Yeah, Oliver, I totally get it. It's like a bad practice. I would recommend everyone who is working as project managers and they fulfill BA's responsibilities, you need to try to sell the benefits of having a professional business analyst. And you can sell this person for, like, if you can do it yourself as a project manager, most probably it means that this one person can cover several projects, and you can like do it part-time for a business analyst. But in my experience, I worked with a like very professional business analyst. And if you compare my writing, even like I was substituting this person for a few days when I had to write the requirements, yes, it takes a lot of time, but even the outcome, the results of my business analysis was so poor compared to her work, so that I just said, no, I will never write requirements. Only business analysts can do it properly. And they will do it much better than you do. So you can and should try to sell the role of a business analyst on your project. All right. I'm reading your practical project management book. It has helped me a lot. Oh, I am so glad to hear that. Thanks for sharing it. All right, let's quickly move on. I will proceed. And we stop here with the quality management plan. Again, I'll repeat this idea. Everything that you will come up with inside your project quality management plan, in terms of all the requirements, all the compliance stuff that you must do in order to finish your project and deliver your product or service to the market, to the end users, should go as requirements. And they go like directly into the requirements. If you think about it, there might be something like, okay, our project needs to have, or in different ways, like a requirement to project management approach from customers. For example, they say, okay, each user story should be covered by test cases, and they should comply with best practices of covering the test cases. Maybe they have a documentation, maybe they have some standard that they follow, and they will say, okay, your QA team must write these test cases, mandatory. You will report the testing efforts based on those test cases. So uh, then they may say, okay, moreover, you need to create or you need to run a regression testing at the end of the project. And that will be a specific requirement, because regression testing of a big project or a system that may be integrated in a larger system will require a lot of efforts. And if you look at this diagram again, like a requirement to run a quality control process, regression testing will go as a requirement and will go into the specified requirements and into project scope statement as a deliverable, some kind of deliverable, the final deliverable, I would say, quality assurance report, which will have several sub-deliverables. And it will go into work breakdown structure. And then you will break it down into tasks. Some tasks will be done in the process of implementation, like testing, our usual testing in Scrum or in IT industry that we do. And then there will be a separate set of tasks at the end of the project, and we'll plan them in advance. You see where we're going? The same goes with quality assurance processes. Maybe I need to explain this a bit for guys who are not familiar with this. So what's the like quality management comes in two main pieces: the quality assurance and quality control. Quality assurance are the set of processes, tools, and workflows that help you to prevent defects from appearing. And quality control helps you to certify that the product is of the required quality and it has or doesn't have certain defects in it. Now, by definition, a quality project or a quality product is the product that closely aligns with the product requirements. And in places where a product behaves or have traits or looks like different from the requirements is obviously a defect. There are a lot of like theory, and it's a separate knowledge domain, quality assurance, quality management in general, where you can debate what's a defect, how to identify defect, how to cover the test case, how to cover user stories with test cases, what techniques to use to write those test cases, how to organize different test suites, and so on and so on. It all goes into quality management plan. Again, no one should expect that all these details will come from your head, that you as a project manager will bring all these ideas into the organization. You should have an experienced, certified quality assurance engineer as your team lead, group lead, who will do all this work. You need to understand it on a conceptual level. You need to organize these processes and ensure that people actually follow these workflows and these processes. That's why, guys, when you start thinking about this in terms of requirements, everything becomes or follows the same pattern. You have the requirements. Every requirement will need some work, some tasks to be done by certain people, and these people need to have certain expertise. Again, some of this work will be a part of your day-to-day implementation. So you don't want to create a product, then test it to find out there are 225 defects that will take another 3 months to finish, to fix. You want to do it work package by work package, ensuring that those work packages don't have defects in them right away. and that you always have, as like if again we talk about IT industry, about Scrum, we always try to keep our product stable, without defects, without critical defects, and potentially shippable, which means that we can give it to customers. Customers may decide that, okay, we'll put it on the market right now. All right. So that's the idea of quality management. Any requirement that comes from any aspect of the project, any additional requirement to project management. For example, a requirement to use a certain progress report template. It's a requirement to your project. You will need to put it into your requirements traceability matrix, treat it as a requirement, and think about how much time it will take you to create those stuff, and transparently show it on the scope of the project. All right, how can I get project management, practical project management book? It's available on Amazon if you want a printed, paperback version, or you can get it from my site. If you go to my channel, there is a link in the description of the channel. All right, let's move on, guys. We are halfway through, I think. All right, project management is a big domain. You don't expect that we will be done in just 60 minutes or 80 minutes, okay? So let's see what's the idea going forward. So we went all the way from the top, from business need. We broke it down into deliverables, into work packages, into tasks. So now the idea is that we will implement tasks, and if we do all the tasks under work package, we'll get a work package. After we implement all the work packages under one deliverable, we'll get a fully finished deliverable. And if we did a good job and complied with all the requirements, including quality assurance requirements and stuff like that, we will force our customers to accept the deliverable. So I want you to visualize this like we went from the top, we identified the goal of the project, went all the down to the task level. And then like task by task, we going up to work packages, deliverables, accepted deliverables, finished requirements pieces, and then a final deliverable as the sum of all accepted deliverables. All right. And that's exactly what's happening here. This arrow goes into, tada, main deliverable. So this is the high-level concept of how we come up to project planning. So before we go into project planning, by the way, we are in project planning, but very early on. And this still, by even till the project scope statement, it still might be some kind of initiation phase. And if you recollect the life cycle, you still see these phases overlap, and your project planning ends very close to finishing some phases of execution. So I will get back soon to that diagram and I'll show it again. So now where I was. We go into planning, yeah. And here we need to understand this is a conceptual thing that we go into this level of tasks. But in practice, if you go this route, like theoretical route, to identify all the deliverables, identify all the tasks, estimate them, do this all the work, it will take you ages just to finish project planning. That's why in practice we don't do that. In IT industry, if it's a software development or IT project like with infrastructure, most probably we'll do a very high level, project planning, where we will plan only on the level of deliverables. So we kind of create the roadmap that a lot of you guys probably do. But if it's a more complex project, we would still use the high-level planning, but we also will use the rolling wave planning technique. This is the progressive elaboration planning technique, which means that we will uh, progressively plan our project. It means that deliverables that come uh, closer to current date, to today, we will plan them out in all the details. So we will identify all the deliverables we must create. We'll break them down into tasks. We'll estimate the tasks going from bottom up, and we'll have a very specific estimates for all that. But after after that, we will not spend a lot of time right away doing the planning of the whole project. We'll plan out the rest of deliverables or rest of requirements on a very high level. And the only like critical idea here is that, for example, if the next requirement you don't know whether it will be two deliverables or there is a need to create a third deliverable, you still need to discuss this with customers. You will estimate it in such a way that you ensure that in the most probable pessimistic scenario, you will still fit, including some possible changes to the requirements. So when you do rolling wave planning, be that IT or non-IT project, your goal is to ensure that you provide realistically pessimistic scenario, but when you come to planning that deliverable, all the work will fit. So you most probably will be on, like, you will take less resources and time to implement them. Or if you take more, it shouldn't be like 2 times more. It should be like 10 to 15% more. So when the time comes, when you go to this deliverable or this requirement, you will at some point break it down. And again, the idea is that if you initially at the start of the project estimated it like 25K to implement it, and the deadline would be May 30th, when you do the planning, it will be more specific numbers like 23,460, and it will be done by May 28th. And you prove it because you did the decomposition, you have all your tasks, all your deliverables, and it's a bottom-up estimate, very accurate, right? So this is a rolling wave planning. We apply it because we don't want to waste time on planning out the project, wasting months on it, because remember that we need to collect all the requirements. And if you come from IT industry, you know that there are no requirements up front. People come up with these requirements based on what they see, how they talk with customers, what the feedback comes, or they often change. So if you waste a lot of time collecting requirements, by the time you plan the project, these requirements will probably change. That's why we don't do it this way. And again, rolling wave planning actually allows you to be still agile and adaptable because you'll say, okay, based on my assumption, that this requirement is, as we understand it on a high level, will be like in the product, then it will take this much. If you want to change this requirement, make it more complex, expect that it will take more time. Still kind of agile, if like I would say it's more agile than a lot of Scrum-based projects that we have in the IT industry. So again, I'll go back to this slide to show you again. So when we start planning, we might be very early on in the project, and we might have very little knowledge about requirements, design. Maybe we'll be doing still prototyping, and it will be a lot of things to consume. So definitely you cannot provide a very definitive plan at this stage. And as you can see, in most IT projects, you will finish planning very late in the development, like execution phase. You will already have requirements designed, you will start development. In most cases, you will start development very early on once you have any like simple idea of what first pieces of the product will be. All right, so just keep this in mind. Okay, let me pause here. Okay, what I can provide, what I can do. Sorry. Hello, what can you advise me for my upcoming tech interview for IT company? Thank you. I have a huge playlist of interview questions and answers for IT project managers on my YouTube channel. If you have like few hours yet before the interview, the best thing you can do is to watch those videos, and they will help you prepare for the interview. And I have a video that explains how I passed the interview for Amazon. That's a top level preparation if you have time for it. A lot of processes, tools, topics to go in one go. Definitely, I'm talking about an epic live stream of project management end to end. The good thing is that you can come back to this topic again later and maybe review it. Okay, we are not yet done, unfortunately, for Dr. K. Sorry, man, we still have a lot of grounds to cover. So remember that we stopped our talking, our process on listing out all the tasks. And this is a critical point where you will take all your tasks, and if you don't use these implied contexts or implied definitions for your tasks, each task will have a lot of information encoded inside these tasks. Things like, what level of expertise do I need? What kind of like seniority level of engineers do I need? How much time do I need? How much it will cost? What's the duration? Where this person should be located? Like if it's it might be even in the IT industry. In which office around the globe do we need this person to sit in order to effectively collaborate with the rest of the team, and so on. And based on that, you will start developing your project management plan. And again, guys, that's another critical thing that a lot of IT project managers forget for some reason, is that project management plan is not only your backlog, is not only a schedule for your roadmap or for your product. It's more than that. Just because in the IT industry, again, we use a lot of implied context, we use a lot of things, we take them for granted, doesn't mean that these things don't happen. And once you get into a bigger project where you actually need to do more than just software development, this is where things get complicated for you. That's why pay close attention right now, because every part of the project plan, it comes from the task level. Definitely, you can assume certain things on deliverables level, or you can assume these things and like take the most probable approach. But the idea is simple. Based on all the tasks that you have, you will start identifying what kind of people you need, their skill level, maybe what tools and materials you need, and that will create your plan for resources, or human resource plan, which will include HR acquisition plan. This is like what people you need to get from other departments, other teams, or what people you need to hire, what their skill set, and by which date do you need them. And if you need to buy some equipment like laptops, chairs, and stuff, if that's a part of your project, you will have a procurement plan here as well. The same goes for the schedule management plan. Again, we are not talking about just Gantt chart. Like everything goes into consideration, durations, dependencies, timelines, and based on that, you can produce your project schedule. The same for the costs. You estimate it on the task level. So, and this brings us to certain things that, again, we consider planning, but everything that I'm talking about during last, I would say, 30 minutes was already planning. It's just that you never experienced it. In most cases, you jump right into the Scrum implementation and you do the execution phase. That's not always the case, even in the IT industry. So now we talk about, okay, we actually need to create project schedule. Usually we create it in form of a Gantt chart. And this is again like collection of concepts that comes from the project management theory. Gantt chart is a visualization because in essence, any schedule is just a set of names of the tasks and start and end date for the task. That's all. Maybe some dependencies. And then we put it on a timeline and we get a Gantt chart. So I won't go too deep into the how to schedule a project because it will be another 3 hours to cover that. But the main idea is that you will take your tasks, and guys, in real life, you don't just take blindly the tasks. You want to group them by deliverables, and if you want to deliver complex projects on time, within budget, and meet the expectations, you must focus on working towards creating a deliverable one at a time if possible. It's not always practical, not always efficient, so maybe 2 or 3 deliverables at a time is good enough. But don't plan your project in such a way that you do 10 tasks from 10 different deliverables at the same time. It's a recipe for disaster. You can and should structure your project in the most efficient way that will ensure that you can control it, right? And if we talk about how to schedule a project, how to create a realistic schedule, here's a step-by-step instruction for you. You can like screenshot it for your own use, but basically, and it's in the book, by the way. If you want to get more detailed explanation of each step, it's in the book. I will not go into details of this stuff. That's how you use it inside any project management tool, all right? So make a screenshot. You can read it after that, or get the book, which would be much better. Now, the same goes for estimating in terms of costs. You go from bottom up, you estimate each task, then you sum up to work packages, to deliverables level, to the project level, and then it goes to the risk management. We'll talk about risk management in a second. Again, not going too deep here. It will depend a lot. Cost management in general will depend a lot on the organization where you work. You just need to understand the principles, and the main principle, if you want to estimate or get a realistic budget for the project, you need to estimate it from bottom up, from tasks upwards. Everything else will be a guesstimate from your side. Now, again, as I said, we will get all these drafts of project schedule, project budget, project resource plans, and so on. That's why, and you should probably guess it, because we haven't done risk management yet. And risk management is a critical part of project management in general. So what you see right now is a typical framework, a very simple framework of risk management, where you identify risk, you put them into risk register, then you do some kind of analysis, quantitative or qualitative risk analysis using some techniques. And you do it because you will have a lot of risks and you won't be able to cover them all. So you need to shortlist them, you need to select some risks to work with, and then you will take those risks, develop risk response plans, implement those risk response plans. And by implementing and developing risk response plans, I mean that they should end up as tasks or reserves of time or budget in your project management plan, transparently. And additionally, you will always monitor the risks that you know, and you will always do the risk identification all the time. So the main idea here is that risk management, like, you do it continuously. There are some ebbs and flows in risk management, but you need to understand that from day one, from like initiation of the project, you should be starting to capture risks. And for example, if we talk about this very complex project which says we need to improve uh, productivity in the organization, your most probably your first risk will be we don't have a productivity expert in our organization. Second risk, we don't have an analysis to, or we don't have even a methodology to select what areas we want to improve productivity, and so on and so on. So you can start identifying a lot of risks right at the start of the project. And then you'll continue like doing it all the way throughout until the end. Closer to the end, you will have less uncertainty and less risks in general in your project because you will know more about your project. Okay, why it's important? I will tell you a very basic idea. It's not like covering all the things you need to know about risk management, but if you again try to plan out the project and you will break down deliverables, you will estimate them, you will end up with work that you know how to do. It's very simple, straightforward, you can do it, no problem. And then there will be work that you kind of uncertain about. You either don't have expertise, you need to do some research, you need to read documentation, and therefore you cannot reliably estimate it or even break down. The best approach is to take deliverables, estimate what you can, and then say, okay, there is some work, I will add buffers, and this buffer will use for that extra work. That's a bad approach because you will do it on all these deliverables. It will bloat your project. But what's worse is that in most cases, this buffer will like slide to the end of the project, and you will kind of eat up this reserve all the time, but you don't have control over it. You can only see that you are using this buffer all the time, that you're consuming these extra efforts that you have, you do extra work that you didn't plan, but you cannot attribute it to certain deliverables, and you don't know whether it's additional work that you didn't identify, or it's work that just took more time because you estimated it not very accurately, and so on. So many questions. So what risk management says is that, okay, there is known tasks, you need to include them directly. There are unknown tasks or tasks with uncertainties, and you must include them as well. You need to transparently put them as tasks. You need most probably estimate them a bit higher with like reserves to ensure that like pessimistically estimate those tasks. And after that, you will end up with total uncertainties that may or may not materialize themselves. And these are actually risks. So the tasks that you don't know how much time they take, that's one thing. But so they can take like from 3 days to 5 days. Okay, this is your tasks with uncertainty. You can just take 5 days and say, okay, this will be 5 days. But we know that we need to do these tasks. But the risk is something that may or may not happen. And it will be like, okay, if it happens, it will add like 50% of efforts for this task. For example, if this piece of software doesn't have this capability to integrate with our product, we will have to write our own integration with this product. And it will take a lot of time rather than just reading the documentation and using the existing API or any solution that connects with this software. If like risk happens, if we read the documentation and actually find out that it's not compatible with our product, risk will materialize, we'll need 50% extra work. But we don't know it yet, and we will put risk reserves for that thing if it happens. We can do it more proactively and say, okay, we will do the prototyping. We will do testing and reading the documentation early on, and we will ensure whether it's required work, whether it's a risk or not. So we'll try to verify that the risk is actually there and it becomes a fact rather than a risk. So this is idea. And basically you do it on a deliverable level. You identify all the known tasks. You still put all the tasks that have uncertainty in terms of scope of or the efforts required. And if there is additional scope, like additional tasks that you may or may not need to perform, they go into risk reserves. And you can like put them in terms of specific tasks with estimates or just additional budget that you can allocate for additional resources and so on. Now, the critical concept here, which I mentioned before, is that when you do risk identification, all identified risks, like in risk register, goes into, and all the risks that you select to work with, because you don't implement risk responses for all risks. Okay, I mixed that up. Sorry. Okay, I'll start from scratch on this slide. So everything that you do in project management, here, every document that you create, you will always apply some kind of risk identification technique. And from each activity that you perform on your project, you will identify risks, and they will go into risk register. So this is direction inwards towards a risk register. But then when you analyze your risks and you create risk responses, it goes outwards. So it's a very critical idea that you need to incorporate. You need to ensure that you don't just talk about risks, that you don't just capture them in the risk register. You need to ensure that they actually materialize in additional work, in additional tasks, or in additional reserves that you may or may not use if the risk happens. Okay? All right, once you do risk management, you will get your final versions of your schedule, budget, everything else. You will add up a bit. Let me just find this slide. You will add up a bit on risk reserves, like usually 10 to 15% of reserves on unknown risks. So after you did your risk management, you identified all the risks. You still want to have some buffer, but you will use it only for risks that you didn't identify and that customers agree that they are risks and should be tackled with these reserves. And this will give you your baseline and so on and so on. All right. Now, I would say, okay, here we will finish with project planning. I definitely skipped a few things, but the idea is if you again apply the same simple concept that everything that we discussed can follow into a very simple concept that everything should follow or flow into your project as requirements. And the requirements should end up in your scope as certain tasks. Then whatever requirements you get to your project or to your product will end up as a task. And that's very simple. And that will go into your schedule, into your budget, into your every aspect of a project. So the idea is that no task should like fly around the project. It should be a part of the plan. And if you implement it and if you adopt this kind of mindset, like project management that goes after that is very simple. Like execution of the project becomes very, very simple, because what happens after that, what you need to be kind of focused on is to tracking the actual costs and comparing them with the planned costs or baselines, and this will give you a variance. If you take several variances throughout several weeks of your project, you will get a trend on this variance. If the trend goes up all the time, week after week, the variance rises, that's a bad sign. point, you have to do something to get the project back on track. Now, again, a lot of people think about only costs and duration. I would recommend that you also track the tasks that people create to ensure that there is no scope variance or additional requirements that were not agreed upon before, because it's also scope variant. So if you extend this idea to the whole project, you need to understand that you need to track all aspects of the project the same way. And you think about quality, you have some benchmarks of quality, you need to check them against the actual values. If you are creating more defects than you planned, and therefore you uh, set aside time for testing, that's a bad sign. You need to do something. And you can do corrective actions, change requests, and stuff like that. All right, this is very simple. What we have done is we went all the way from top to bottom to creating activities and identifying all the activities. Most probably, and this is the best practice, you do it inside a project management software right away, so that you have one source of truth. You will create your tasks and assign it to certain people, and then you will do all those tasks, create work packages, create deliverables. You will collect performance data, so actually the actual values to implement those tasks. Again, you compare them with all the aspects of the assignment of the task. You do it across all aspects of the project day by day, collect all this data. You may have control accounts. I will not stop here. It's just a fancy way to combine several deliverables. And again, you will have some feedback loops between completed deliverables, defects, acceptance from clients, but usually it all ends up in quality assurance domain, or change management in scope management, like new requirements. They say, okay, it looks good, but I want it to be a green button, not blue button. Please change it. So if you conceptualize this idea, again, project management will become very, very easy, because it all ends up in a very short list of what you need to do. You need to ensure that tasks that planned for today are finished today. You need to ensure that there are no roadblocks or impediments for the tasks that planned for today, and ideally a few days ahead. So you need to think one step ahead in your project plan. You need to motivate people to follow all aspects of your project plan. You need to motivate or engage stakeholders to follow all aspects of project plan. And this is most probably one of the critical one. You need to spend time on rolling wave planning, as we discussed it. This is a big part of what happens for many project managers right now, because you do this in agile way with Scrum. But basically what you do is you are constantly planning, collecting requirements all the time, and that's why it looks a mess for you, because you skipped a few processes, few planning processes, and there is no structure in how the requirements get to you, and therefore you cannot do rolling wave planning very efficiently, even in Scrum, even in the agile environment. So you will control after that the risks, you will monitor new risks, you will collect performance data, ideally automatically, you don't do it manually, that's counterproductive. You will write progress reports and in general keep people informed about your project. And you will update plan when you see needed, but ideally you do it very rarely. You don't update plan when the first thing doesn't work according to the plan. And that's it. This is we talked so much about conceptual ideas of project management to ensure that executing any project will boil down to just these 10 steps or 10 activities, nothing more. And I will go as far as to say that all projects, whether they are plan driven, whether they are waterfall, whether they are like run with Scrum in safe environment, in any environment, they do follow this concept of this planning and then executing the plan. The only challenge is that a lot of you guys, you jump hoops from, you don't get this goal-aware projects. You jump into a project that already know what's the solution of the project, so you implement the solution right away, or the outcome of the project. That's why you don't see it. But you didn't take time in your professional development to create such an end-to-end vision of project management. And that's why a lot of activities on your current project uh, look difficult or complex. Or in general, your project looks like a mess, like a whole mess of a lot of things going on, and you're always doing something new and nothing works by the book. All right, we are finished. It took us only 2 hours to quickly run through all aspects of project management. I would say not all, but we covered a lot. So I have a few batteries left to answer a few questions. So if you have any question, feel free to write it right now. I will answer a few of them. What do I expect for an interview that focuses on commercial IT excellence? Any ideas? No. It can be anything. Like if you are like talking about excellent, perfect outsourcing of software development or IT like services, I would say deliver on time within budget. How you're going to do that? And then you will describe everything that I explained right now. Definitely, you will take less than this, just explain the main concepts. How heavy is documentation in agile space compared to predictive environment? It's as heavy as you make it. There are no requirements to do any documentation in predictive or plan-driven projects. You can skip all the like the only documentation that is, I would say, mandatory in predictive environment is requirements. You cannot just like plan out the project by talking through requirements, and if it's like even a small project, it's a lot of requirements to keep in your head. So requirements is the only documentation that you need on a plan-driven project. In agile space, I would say your your user stories, well-written user stories, kind of mandatory on agile project. A definition of done is a good, like, I would say, yeah, this is mandatory document if you want to do it efficiently, and that's all. So I would say it's the same. You can complicate it with project charters, scope statements, and any other document that we discussed today. But you need to understand why you created. Because the way you ask the question is like, how heavy is documentation? But like assuming that you need to create all the documents, like they're all prescribed. Again, you need to understand how and why you create those documents, right? It's critical that you understand the benefits or implication of having or not having a specific document. Yeah, it's light compared to waterfall if you imply this waterfall approach as an end-to-end approach. Because waterfall, like we use this term very easily, but waterfall is a very specific framework. And yes, it's very prescriptive. It's like end-to-end thing. But in here, I've described a typical plan-driven idea. When you know how to create a plan, your goal is to create a plan. That's all. In this case, you can make it as lightweight as possible or as needed. Do you incorporate earned value management, for those who don't know EVM, to PM practices, and at which point? So I don't like, I used earned value management once in projects, and it was agile project management, and it was to prove that uh, we didn't fail the project actually. But that's a different story. I don't use it too often, and like, you need to understand again why you want to use it. Earned value management, in essence, it's a reporting tool or control tool, and to use it correctly, like, again, you need to understand like how earned value management works. You need to have fully planned out project to have the planned value, like this chart of planned value, which you will compare to the actual value. You need to have the whole project plan from start to end. Then you can do this earned value management. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to have it. So yes, you can do it on a high level with the rolling wave planning, but you definitely need to plan it to the end. And then you track it with the actual values. If you need to, like, at which point you start to do it, at the start of the project. It should be, I would say, it should be a project management requirement for you as a project manager to track this, because I would say it's not very useful. There are a lot of like considerations in the daily work that you need to take into account in order for this approach to work. Sorry, I don't share my slides for one big reason, because I believe these are kind of unique asset, and I don't want to for them to end up all over the internet, because it's the work of my life to summarize it into these slides, simple to understand, to show all the workflows. If you want to get all those slides, join my mentorship program, and then you will have lifetime access to all the course materials there. Could you please throw more light on project planning in an agile environment? That's a good question. So basically, you need to understand that project planning in agile environment is the same as it is in plan-driven project. The only thing, and again, agile planning is actually the same idea as with rolling wave planning. The only concepts that you need to incorporate into agile planning is that your unit of measurement is not like a day or a dollar. You need to measure everything in sprints, or the capacity of a team during one sprint. And then you have your plan based on the like sprints ends and all the work that can fit into one sprint. And if you again do the proper decomposition of requirements, you will have your epics that are decomposed properly. That's a key point here. An epic, like if you do it just straight away, it will be endless list of user stories that are connected to this idea of this or this capability. But you want to keep epics time boxed to a release or some entity in your cycle. It might be a quarter, it might be a product increment, it might be a release. And if you have the same epics that relates to one feature and they like expand on functionality, then you need to have separate epics for different cycles. And then you can plan it out based on sprints, and you will have your Gantt chart, which will show all the sprints and all the epics that can fit into that into that sprint. And again, it will be a very high level plan. You will plan it out based on most probably the story points, and you will explain that it's a very high level plan. But as I explained, there are deliverables, like creating or implementing the features doesn't mean that at the end you get the fully potentially shippable product. You need to show that, okay, these will be development sprints on my timeline, and there will be 1, 2, 3 sprints for stabilization and preparation for going live, whatever it takes. All right. After that, the same idea. Just select a different unit of measurement, like your sprint. And the same goes, by the way, for budget. You don't budget by story point or estimate or feature. You budget for the whole team for one sprint. It should be granular enough for customers to say, okay, we want 9 sprints, not 10 sprints. All right. Walk me through your role in your most recent project as a project manager. Should mention all the phases of a project. What is the best approach to interview question? Well, you actually describe your responsibilities on that project. The only suggestion here is to use proper project management terminology, not like the terminology that you used in your company. For one reason, because people like project management in 2 different companies are absolutely different. So you need to ensure that the people on the receiving side, on the like interviewer, will relate to the complexity and size of that project. All right. Living in Agile, there are pillars in manifesto saying working product over project documentation. Typically, documentation is really light. Yeah, that's true. Like the same goes, by the way, to plan-driven projects. No one forces you. There are no mandatory documentation that will stop you from planning out the project. You can skip almost any piece that I described. You don't need project chart. You can discuss it on a meeting. You don't need the requirements traceability metrics. You just structure those requirements correctly in Jira, grouping them by epics, and that's your requirements traceability metrics. Where is this theory from? Your book? Thank you. So this theory comes from my practical experience running IT projects in the real world. It's a bit of mix from all the books, all the courses that I had, transforming it into real life application. So this is something that I used this way or another in real projects. And yes, it's in my book on a high level, like definitely in more details than today I described it. And it also in my mentorship program, where I teach it in much more details, very granular. But everything that I teach inside my products, this is actually practical and usable. This is something that works in the real world. Okay, great present. Thank you very much. Glad you find it useful. And Sophia, thank you as well. Yeah, I double that. Usually documentation is a way to cover your back. The only like caveat here, you need to understand when, like you need to feel when it's about low trust, or in many cases, these complex IT projects, you need to apply a bit more empathy and think about, like, again, all these steps where I said share the responsibility. You need to understand that your stakeholders, people who pay for the project, who ask for the requirement, they are not subject matter experts. They are not technical experts. And when you ask them serious questions, or you ask them to make serious decisions, it means that you ask them to take responsibility for those decisions, but they don't have the skills or knowledge. That's why it often feels they try to cover their back and ask for this documentation because they don't trust. But they don't trust because they are afraid, they feel insecure because they don't have the required knowledge to answer your questions. If you like exclude this and you still feel like it's a low trust organization, okay. But if you don't, like if you feel like you can bring transparency with documentation, you should probably do that. That's why I recommend that in most IT projects, you need to provide some simple visualization for customers, for clients, for stakeholders to understand what you work on. And you can, if you can, you should try to explain it in simple terms. And the best way is to use metaphors to explain complex technical problems. Okay, again, agree, we discussed that. Agile is also more product oriented than project oriented. Yeah, in general, I would say, yeah, it's like whenever you have just one product, like as a main deliverable, yes, it's like Scrum is very product oriented. When you have a software development product as one deliverable, and the same Scrum team, for example, needs to create user design, user interface designs, or documentation, or there is a one-time piece that is not in the like typical skill set of the Scrum team, then Scrum like starts to perform worse because you need to artificially add people to do part-time job, have part-time people participate in the Scrum and still somehow prioritize their work and do it on time. I come from telecom rollout PM role. Believe me, we go serious heavy on the community before implementing and going rollout. Yeah, I can totally get it. There are some industries where this like documentation and prior planning is mandatory. It's regulated. There are audits for that. So that's totally true. That's why I say that every piece of document, if it's a required piece, it should come as a requirement. It should go into your full project management plan where it ends up as a task, a set of tasks, as a deliverable. Okay, great. Great, we're on the same page. Thank you so much. How do you ensure good decision making during the course of the project? Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it's a matter of including the right people in the right discussions. That's one thing. The second thing, you need to ensure that you as a project manager use the right tools and processes and techniques to collect the right information. One of the examples is like Delphi technique. You can Google what it means. It's a like research technique that you can apply to get unbiased opinion and information from different stakeholders to see if there is conflicting ideas or conflicting opinions, so that you can at once work on those conflicts rather than focusing on one expert and taking his point of view. Third thing that I can add is that including your team in this decision-making process is also valuable, not because they have the best expertise, but because they will be the ones who will need to implement the ideas, and they need to you need to test or see or assess their capability to implement something super complex. Maybe a simpler decision or simpler approach will ensure that you will deliver on time within budget and stuff like that. And again, visualize. If anything you can do to improve decision making, which relies on stakeholders, not just you and your project team, because you work with them face to face, you can assess it like emotionally. When you work with stakeholders, you must help them visualize everything that you discuss on the project so that they can understand and see what we're talking about. Use simple language, use metaphors to explain complex topics, and don't be afraid to ask questions, stupid questions as well. If you feel like there is a stupid question, you must ask it, because I can guarantee that 10 other stakeholders that have the same question, but they are not comfortable to ask it. So how do you gather requirements as an IT project manager? If you are an IT project manager, you most probably need to master at least one requirements documentation technique, which is user stories. You need to follow it by the letter until you find like strength or wisdom to change the approach, change the way you collect requirements. So learn how to write the best user stories you can. Then like it's a process of testing and refining and trying and doing and working. How do you collect actually requirements from stakeholders? It's a matter of conversations. And basically, again, it will feel like repetitive, but it's again visualization in your head of the requirements. And usually, again, it's very useful to put yourself in the shoes of the end user and ask yourself a lot of questions. Okay, this is the functionality, like you can record the screen, you can talk to it. What will happen if I click this button? What will happen if I click this button? What if I start like clicking all the buttons at once? What will happen? What should happen if someone starts like asking a lot of questions, spamming this chat? Do we need functionality to cover that use case? And so on. So asking the right questions. You can ask those questions yourself. You can ask those questions your stakeholders. You can ask those questions your team. And so the more questions you ask, the more use cases you you will cover, the better. And use case is a very simple term, how the end user will or can use your application or your service. Basically, the requirements is the way to describe the behavior of application from the perspective of a user, so what they can do. But when you write it, you describe it in such a way that developers understand what needs to be done. So you should be kind of in two mindsets at the same time. And creating visual diagrams, designs firsthand helps you to identify all the written requirements, all the user stories that you must write out. That's all. Don't overcomplicate it, especially in the IT industry. If you have to write requirements, you just use user stories. If you don't use user stories, write as simple as possible so that developers can understand what they need to create, and talk more. You need to communicate and you need to ensure that people understand what you write. Mainly interviewing main stakeholders, sometimes observing information, data, etc. Yeah, I had a screen like a list of techniques that you can use. I don't know if you can quickly bring this up. Yeah, let me quickly show it. Boom. So what you can apply as techniques to collect requirements: interviews, brainstorming, questionnaires, like you ask a group of stakeholders the same questions, surveys, almost the same stuff, but maybe more open-ended questions. Document analysis, you just read documentation. For example, if you ever need to create an application for iPhone, you will definitely need to read the human interface guidelines for iPhone applications. Focus groups, if you can collect your stakeholders, usually end users, and ask them like how they will use your application, what they see in the application, and so on. That's also a way to collect requirements. One, again, important technique is to analyze competitors, because if we talk about IT industry, we do a lot of similar components. For example, login page. Every single application has a login page. You can look at the competitors and collect the requirements, like best practices. Definitely don't copy it just as is, but you can copy the behaviors and implement or improve them. Prototyping, again, if you can show to the customers an early version to play with, they will provide you more requirements. They will say what works correctly, what doesn't work correctly, what should be improved. Observation, you can take an end user, show them the designs, show them the first version of application, and try to see which buttons they try to click, how they use the application, and so on. Workshops is the same, but with a group of people. All right, I hope that's all. I hope you got a lot of information and value from today's live stream. We covered project management end to end. You can watch this in replay in few hours, or I think it's available right away. I also recommend that you get my professional development plan, because it's not only the plan, it's also the set of additional resources like templates, stakeholder management plan, risk register, all the good stuff, plus links to valuable videos and resources that will help you understand each and every component of this project management approach that I described. And plus, it's an assessment list. You will put check marks against all the competencies of a project manager, and it can become your real professional development plan that you will use on your project. All right, with that said, thanks for watching. Thanks for staying with me. I will see you next year. That's the last live stream. And once you get the development plan, by the way, you can register to my upcoming workshop. This workshop happens only a few times a year. A unique workshop on project tailoring. We will explore how to connect all these pieces together, because right now I gave you just a high-level structure of project management. There are a lot of considerations come into play when you need to connect it all together, and when you need to connect it with real-life project management tools. So this workshop will focus specifically on that. And I can guarantee you, based on my research, which I will share, by the way, with all people who are subscribed to my newsletter, why project tailoring and ability to select the most appropriate project management processes and tools for your project will be the topmost skill that you will need in 2025, so next year. All right, with that said, thanks so much.